Welcome to Moments with Marianne. This is your host, Marianne Pastana. And we're here today with special guest, Kenny Werner, who's here to share with us his new book, Becoming the Instrument: Lessons on Self-Mastery from Music to Life. When you hear music, do you feel like sometimes the physical merges with the spiritual? Well, today Kenny's here to share with us how music really impacts our lives. Kenny Werner has been a world-class pianist and composer for over 40 years. His prolific output of compositions, recordings, and publications continue to impact audiences around the world. In 1996, he wrote his landmark book titled Effortless Mastery: Liberating the Master Musician Within. Werner was awarded the 2010 Guggenheim Fellowship Award for his seminal work, No Beginning, No End, a musical journey exploring tragedy and loss, death and transition, and the path from one lifetime to the next. He has performed with numerous legendary musicians and is the founding musical director of the Effortless Mastery Institute at Berklee College of Music, and has composed for international orchestras, receiving numerous NEA grants, and has been nominated for an Emmy Award. So it's my great honor to introduce Kenny Werner.
Thank you, Marianne.
What an honor it is to have you here and to talk about this book. What inspired you to write it?
Well, I've always had this, I've always learned a lot of lessons from trying to master music. And I found that the lessons were very relative to other subjects, whether you're mastering anything else or just mastering one's life, which is just the ability to explore the inner landscape and not be so hostage to the outer landscape. And all these things you learn when you're just playing, you're in your own bubble and you're not worried about what people think about you. And so there were a lot of lessons from that. And of course, I've been teaching now a method I came up with 25 years ago called Effortless Mastery. And there are a lot of lessons in that. So it's expanded to the point where I felt it was time to write another book that had a lot more information in it.
Well, I'm so glad you did. I felt that your book was just so impactful. And I want to touch on the title real quick, Becoming the Instrument. I mean, what does that even mean?
Well, when a person is not riddled by ego, they become more like a tree. They become more like a thing. And when a person becomes the instrument that plays the instrument, they're not held back by so many doubts and fears. And I believe that's a lesson that easily translates into whatever career you have or whatever you think your value as a human being.
There's so much to be gained there. And even from a spiritual level, I mean, you look at that and you're like, okay, I can kind of resonate with that.
Well, it's a practice. You know, a lot of people have sayings and philosophies that they really resonate with. Problem is they can't do them. So the distance between your philosophical goal and what you're able to do is practice, just like your distance between your desire to play a piano and playing the piano. What does it take? A lot of practice, right? It takes practice to make decisions, for example, without fearing consequences. This is something musicians do, and they don't even think about it. It takes practice to love the sound you're making instead of criticize the sound you're making, even though you believe you should love the sound you're making. But habitually, you're still criticizing the sound you're making. So what's the distance? Well, how do you cross that moat? You practice loving that sound, whether you love it or not, and then you start to merge with it. And I believe person merges with their own actions that way too. They take more actions because the actions are not hostage to the consequences of those actions.
Well, and it sounds like they take more chances because they're just trusting.
Well, they're trusting because they don't have to succeed. That's always the missing piece. Can you love yourself for failing? If you can, you're probably going to succeed an awful lot.
Well, it sounds like you just gave us the keys there,
It's a
So,
key. But
a key.
in music, there are 12 keys.
Well, I know in your book, and I'm sure musicians know all about this, but for our listeners, in your book, you talk about the space. So, what is the space?
The space is being in this moment without thinking. Sounds easy enough, but in the 21st century, I would say it's the goal to be in this moment, not worrying about your next assignment or tomorrow or next week or what are you going to do with the pandemic? Or, there's a lot of externals, for example. And if you're in your mind, you are carrying the weight of those externals. If you're in the space, you're light because it's only this moment. If you're in the what I call the conscious mind, you are weighing a lot of things, asking questions that you really don't have answers to. From the space, you don't have any questions. And every time you can touch that space, the mind remembers it. It says, oh, that's me without all this color coding. That's me without all this protection. The protection is okay, but it also protects you from your most brilliant thoughts.
Is that where all creativity kind of is sparked from?
Well, I mean, there are many names for it, and really religion has names for it. The Holy Spirit, philosophy has names for it, universal mind. Then again, even from a neurological point of view, from a psychological point of view, science, there's the conscious mind, the self-conscious mind, the superconscious. There are many references to this. And now I believe the science of neurology, they're really charting what lights up when you just act from a place of pure action, which is the space. It's the absence of doubt. In the absence of doubt, you have pure action. So what lights up in the brain? I'm sure they're right on that now. I just wanted something that was very accessible. So I think I called it the space.
Well, I like that, definition because it really kind of puts it into perspective for people. And you hear about people that get into like the zone. I would
Right.
assume that's kind of like that.
It is kind of like that. The difference is that there are people that think it's kind of fatalistic. Will I get in the zone or won't I? Or when I got in the zone, how did I do it? Why can't I do it again? Why can I never get in the zone when I want to show it to somebody else? So effortless mastery or becoming the instrument means practicing the zone. Practicing the zone means a safe way to completely drop all your demands. And a really good way of distracting yourself from that is to simply watch yourself breathe. Now, in many traditions, you start with the breath. But again, I wanted it as simple and as accessible as possible. So I would say to someone, you're already breathing, right? You were breathing in your best moments. You were breathing in your worst moments. You don't need practice in breathing. Everybody's a virtuoso. No matter what they do in their life, they're still breathing, right? And I just say, let's take a half a minute and watch ourselves do it. Not even watch me breathe, watch it breathe. And that is a little sampling, like a seed of what it feels like to be you without any of the blinders.
I love that. I love that.
And the mind does retain some recognition of it. And if you keep doing it, again, the same way you would do it without goals, just you could stop in the middle, you're waiting for the light to change or someone's talking and you're uncomfortable, or as we mostly do, especially in quarantine, torment ourselves with questions of the future that we have no answers to. So there's a lot of things we know we don't want to do, but we can't stop doing them. And there's a lot of things we wish we could do, but we can't seem to get started. And I find all of this, the possibility of changing it is getting to a space where you've stripped everything away. It doesn't matter how long you're in the space. That's always been the misunderstanding. If I was to say, okay, we're going to go into the space for 5 minutes, you'd probably never get there because you'd just be thinking, how do I get to the space? But if we said for 20 seconds, you're just going to watch yourself breathe, you would totally experience the space. And then you let it go. And these little flashes help you get into the zone. So then more typically, you start to become familiar with what the zone is.
Ooh, That is, and I think it's so empowering because then people they can actively get into the space and really be there as opposed to, is it a hit or miss?
Right. I use the example of darts. Everybody's an amateur dart player, but they all play darts, right? If you happen to go to a pub, you play darts. And there's that one time you throw it and a second before, this is going in the bullseye. I mean, you can feel it. You don't have time to say it, but it. Just everything's perfect. And sure enough, boom, right into the bullseye. So when you're an amateur, my question is, where's that next dart go? Trying to recreate that situation, it may head towards the bullseye. It may end up at the bottom of the wall because suddenly you're being precious trying to recreate something that just happened. So practice would be practice doing it without needing to hit the bullseye, but allow the body to take over. And then eventually the body figures out what it has to do. What in sports, being in the zone has to do with a lot of parts of the body being in the right place. And once they're in the right place, the result is perfection. But in music, people get too concerned with how it sounds every moment. And to realize that really playing music is a bodily thing. Once the body's playing it, I don't have to.
That's just remarkable. And thank you for taking the time to expand on that, because I really was kind of looking at it, okay, some people might look at the zone and space and wonder what the difference is, and so what are some of the blocks that people put up that kind of keep them from being in the space?
Well, there is a whole chapter on the blocks. I think there is some humor in the book too, because because I have humor. And if I'm going to write a book, it has to be coming from me. Not the kind of book I think I should write. So you see, even that, do I want to write the kind of book I think I should write? Or do I want to write what wants to come through me? So the first block for the zone for everyone is trying to succeed. So there needs to be a space for creative failure. You're not intending to fail. You're just not trying to succeed. And in that, you find a flow. When success and failure are not the Mendoza line, it's not valid if you succeed and invalid if you fail. Once you even eliminate failure as a emotional setback, you find yourself succeeding a lot more. That's in general. So one of the blocks is that. Another block, all the blocks come from thoughts. For example, you start working on the space, and then your thought is, oh God, this is going to take me a lifetime. And then you don't have the patience to stay with it. Or why didn't I learn this 40 years ago? That renders what's going on now pretty weak. Instead of just saying, here I am in this moment, what is the space? I'm going to practice doing something, and I'm going to do it from the space. So before I try to do anything, I practice the space itself, which simply means watching myself do something I've been doing all my life, breathing. Every time I watch it, it kind of wipes the blackboard. Now, from there, you want to practice something that your ego is hooked into. And what you want to do is practice doing it from the space rather than trying to do it right. And even if that never leads to a bullseye, you'll notice when you're back in your life that you have a lot more control without trying to control. What it does is it adds more natural control when you have been practicing getting the yoke of success and failure off of you. So it's a creative space to just do and not measure. Other blocks is, they all kind of derive out of that. If you didn't care, if you were a musician and you didn't care how good you sounded, you'd probably sound amazing, whether you were incredible or very simple. We have a lot of musicians that can barely play, and they are icons. What's the secret? The secret is that they're not in touch with their limitations. They're in touch with their limitlessness as they speak their lyrics or they play their few chords. So the power is in self-acceptance, and is even a greater power of gratitude for the self-acceptance, and a still greater power if you happen to graduate from acceptance to actually love. If you love a note, that note takes on a lot of power. So you're really practicing your mental attitude towards the action when you're practicing the space. Then you go and do what you do, and you actually don't think about it. You just do what you do. If you like to get mad at yourself, get mad at yourself. If you wish you were better, wish you were better. But these practices reprogram you so that you might be in the heat of action, for example, and notice that some baggage is just not there.
Man, that would be amazing.
Well,
And it is amazing.
Well, you practice something not to insert it into your actions, but you practice something to see what the effect of it is on your actions. And that's how you know it's affecting you, because you weren't trying to do anything. You're just performing at a higher level, but you're not trying any harder. In fact, you might think you're trying less.
Yeah, you're right about the humor in your book. I loved it. It's got your book is so very well written, and I can see where all these lessons can work with sports or business or personal development or spiritual development.
Exactly.
There was just so much there that it covers pretty much every field.
Well, I think we have a lot to learn from sports training, because they acknowledge that it is the programming of the body. Musicians tend to think it all comes from their will to create. They don't realize how much of it comes from the body. And so when you get the mind out of the way, you can actually train on a deeper level. But that would be the same thing for golf. It would be the same thing for computer programming. If you're studying something and you're not constantly tormented by the destination, I haven't gotten there yet, I haven't gotten there yet. If you are tormented like that, you're probably not going to get there, because you're going to run out of gas before you attain anything. There's a saying, don't quit one day before the miracle happens. So it's easier not to quit when success is not the only thing. Success is not even relevant. It's the doing of the practice that's relevant. And then when you start to notice benefits that descend on you rather than you trying to employ them, then you need less faith, because you're becoming more personally successful at what you're doing.
Yeah, it's just the integration of all that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and I know in your book, you talk about left and right brain integration, and you do it with pop science. I'd love for you to kind of share that with us.
Sure. I'll call it pop science because I believe it's already been debunked. But there is still this general sense that your creative side is the right side of the brain and your, detailed part is the left side of the brain. So when I talk about integration, it takes a lot of intentional detail to learn how to play a piano. But to perform, you want to go into the right side of the brain completely, if we use this pop science, and accept whatever the lessons are you've learned. Also helps you accept whatever lessons have not been learned. You can mess up your own performance by trying to enact things that really haven't been digested. But again, that's the ego. But from the space, you let the body perform. From the space, you let the mind perform. So, even the right brain thing of the left brain thing of the study of medicine, and yet there'll be somebody, or the study of computer programming, and yet there'll be somebody that will have that undefined inspiration for all of us, because at the right moment, they switch to the right brain, and they allow the information to unfurl itself instead of trying to think, here I should do this, and it'd be good to do that. No, they're going to trust, and that's the right side. The ideas come, really, there's like an express lane and a local lane, and the local lane is you're trying to justify every idea that's coming by. The express lane is you're in the jet stream, and when an idea comes, you embrace it.
Well, on that note, we're going to pause here for a quick break. We've been speaking with Kenny Werner in regards to his new book, Becoming the Instrument: Lessons on Self-Mastery from Music to Life. We'll be right back after these messages from our sponsors.
Are you an actor, public speaker, or an executive telling your story over Zoom? Jean-Louis Rodrigue and Scott Weintraub's new book, Back to the Body, takes the process they use to coach top Hollywood talent like Margot Robbie, Jack Black, and Ke Huy Quan and makes it available to everyone. Using your body and its energy as a point of departure, your work will gain an enhanced level of performance and depth. Back to the Body, available on Amazon and wherever books are sold.
Every day, pets are surrendered and abandoned. For these helpless and hurting animals, Paws Humane Society acts as a voice for the voiceless, providing hope for a brighter future. You can make a difference in the life of a shelter pet. Become a humane hero today. Just $10 a month will provide much-needed food, shelter, medical care, and love. It takes a community. It takes heroes like you. Together we can. Together we will. Together we are Paws Humane. Visit pawshumane.org to be a hero in every animal story.
What if everything we think we know about addiction, depression, anxiety, and trauma is missing the one key element that will actually let you walk away from them for good? My name's Bob Gardner, founder of The Freedom Specialist and creator of a body-based approach that eliminates suffering and creates happiness, health, and well-being on autopilot. You can read all about it in my book, Built for Freedom, or start your own adventure toward lasting freedom at thefreedomspecialist.com.
If you want to stop divorce fast, you do not need to waste years in therapy, you do not need to work on yourself, and you do not even have to have your spouse on board. If your spouse wants out, if they're filing for divorce, separation, or having an affair, what you need is a proven process to turn your marriage around. Book a free breakthrough session with us at highthrivecoaching.com/apply.
Dr. Richard London, who has 25 years of experience being known as the Man of Steel with the Heart of Velvet, presents the Life Wellness System, The Road to Yes, a mentoring system that brings you to becoming a wellness heir. Imagine having wealth, wellness, love, peace, and spirituality in abundance and balance now. Visit doctorateoflife.com or call 720-213-8021 for a free 15-minute wellness evaluation.
The first thing you need to know about me is that I love my kids, but they are not my everything. They used to be, but that's when my entire life fell apart. In order to pick back up the pieces, I had to put the love I have for myself before everything else, including my kids. I'm Jessica Dennehy, and I own multiple businesses. I'm a best-selling author, and I have all the strategies that I've used to make my life what it is today. And I'm going to teach you how to do them in my new book, Selfish is a Superpower. So go get your copy today on Barnes & Noble or jessicadennehy.com.
Announcing a revolutionary tool for wellness. Scalar Light has the ability to enhance and harmonize your own bioenergies. With Scalar Light, you can get started in just minutes and begin feeling better the very next day. Scalar Light is a remote energy that gently and subtly works with your own body's bioenergies, increases pro-cellular wellness, and enhances your body's immunity.
Experience the benefits of Scalar Light. Try a complimentary 15-day experience at scalarlight.com.
In your hands lie ancestral patterns. These patterns shape how you think, what you struggle with, and experiences you love, your life pattern. We're going into the latest neuroscience of biological hand analysis, a realm beyond palmistry where science and the soul entwine. Hand analysis is the latest method to transform lifelong patterns. I am Master Hand Analyst Brent Bruning. Join us and visit thepowerinyourhands.com.
I'd like to thank Jason Eastwood at Guitarfulness for sharing his inspiring music and talent with us. His music is known worldwide for cultivating atmospheres of harmony, inner peace, and clarity. Visit Jason's website at guitarfulness.com. Join his newsletter, be part of his community, and download his music. Welcome back to Moments with Marianne. We're here today with special guest, Kenny Werner, who's here sharing with us his new book, Becoming the Instrument: Lessons on Self-Mastery from Music to Life. Before we left for a break, we were talking about this space. Now, is this something that is a practice, or do we just pick it right up?
It's important for people to know it's a practice. Otherwise, they can expect it after reading a book. And reading a book is a good indication of what one might do. But the book should indicate a path of action. How would I manifest this nice, beautiful, high statement? You know, let's say in music, I love every sound I make. No, nobody would disagree with that, but how many people do? So the distance between actually loving the sound you make and the notion that that's where you want to be is practicing loving the sound you make. To practice loving the sound you make, the love has to be unconditional, meaning it could be the ugliest sound, and you are receiving it as if it is the most beautiful sound. You can reprogram. You just have to stay consistent about an incremental approach to changing an attitude towards something. And eventually, as it changes, you see the fruits of that open up, and it's beautiful.
That really puts things in perspective for people. Thank you for taking the time to share that with us. The subtitle of your book is called Lessons on Self-Mastery from Music to Life. Do you feel that people get hung up on the self-mastery part? Maybe it sounds like it's just going to be so difficult to get to that level?
I do, because I think life is a lot bigger subject than music. And a lot of people feel the other way. They're actually more well-adjusted in their life. And then they play music and they think something really important is happening. And they create a drama that doesn't exist. So when I said it was actually lessons in self-mastery from music to life, what I learned, for example, is that if I have studied deeply and transferred the information to my hands, then all I have to do is sit there and breathe while my hands play. So that's something I learned from music. In life, what I want to do is go deeply into ownership of whatever it is I'm doing, and then turn the results over and let go of the results. It's the same kind of thing. I don't want ego to cut off my training because I'm impatient. And then I don't want ego to block what wants to happen, which may employ that training, but it may employ something else that you never thought of. So it's developing an ability to separate, well, let's say left brain, right brain, but separate the actions of gaining skill from the complete self-acceptance of whatever actions are based on that skill. That's not too snaky of statement. If you can.
No, I like that. I think it's, really a powerful statement. And it's interesting because, I think sometimes when people start making mistakes, then they're kind of getting out of their practice. They're kind of thinking, oh gosh, I didn't do that right. Or how can I make this better?
Right. All they do in that case is dim their light. I would say you could take note of what could be better, but don't regret what you did. What you did is what you were ready to do. And if you start to honor that, then there is no failure. There's even truth in failure. But like it works socially too. You walk into a room with people you respect. Are you going to think about what could I say that will really grab the attention and they'll really admire me? Or do you go inside, connect with your breath, and only speak when something speaks through you? You might say 1/5 of what you might have said, but every time you open your mouth, everybody turns your way. So in some ways, by releasing the ego, you get results that the ego would have liked. Like, oh, wow, everybody's paying attention to me. But if you walked in the room with the objective of everybody paying attention to you, it would have a very dimming effect, maybe even an annoying effect.
Having someone come in and take over, right?
Well, yeah. It's just what I find, like this has been an interesting time because we're in the pandemic and you have people walking around and say, how are you doing? I go, well, in these strange times, I'm not. So, did you get Omicron or did you get COVID? No. Oh, did you lose anybody? No. Still have a job? No. Okay. Well, what's strange for you? You're watching too much news. Basically, you're taking on the ills of the world in ways that you have no way to affect. And all you do is you're taking your energy down for today. So I can point to a certain date way before the pandemic. It had to do with politics, we'll just say. And I said, from this day on, it really won't help. I won't be able to help others if I'm going to inhale this politics around me. So I made a decision to stop listening to the news and to stop using Facebook because it didn't add anything. It just presented more things that I had no control over. And as I started to do that, I started to explore the inner landscape of between my ears. And I could say the period during, the worst of the quarantining might have been my spiritually freest period I've ever experienced, because I just shut down more of the stuff outside. It's not adding anything to me, and there's nothing I can do about it. Not today. I'm open to doing something about it. If something presents it to me, then my in this momentness will turn itself to that. And there'll be no fear of doing it, because it's not about succeeding. It's about doing. But in the absence of that, let me just watch my mind, because all the freedom will be in how I receive the information around me. And all the bondage is how I let that information pull me down. And I learned that from music. That's the thing. That's what the theme of the book is. Someone goes into a gig and the piano's out of tune and the guy hasn't paid him yet, and he has a different price than what you said you were going to pay him. And you walk in with a lot of baggage. Or you go into the space and you play the piano that is, and your acceptance of it actually makes it start to sound in tune. And the owner feels like such a creep for you coming in, doing something so inspiring that he not only gives you the money you thought, he gives you more. I mean, you have the power to affect outer things, but they are from the inner processing of your own freedom. Your freedom should not be dependent on whether we're in a pandemic or not. Now, you might get sick and you feel bad. I just had some health issues recently, and I didn't confuse, it wasn't fun, but I didn't confuse it with mental bondage, because my mind, it's up to me. If I'm venturing into the future, let's say I'm not feeling good, well, how long is this going to go on? And that's going to make me feel worse. But if I can just be tuned in today, I'm dealing with something. It's not fun, but this is today. And then I have the power to be present if and when it changes. It works in every case. You really don't want to be hostage to outer conditions, because it's now more than ever, outer conditions seem that they can get to a really absurd place and a very dangerous place. And they're way, way out of our control.
Mm-hmm. I agree with you on that. And then it takes people, if they're so focused on the outside, you have, things are going good. No, things are going bad. So they're on this roller coaster ride of good and bad and how I feel, as opposed to, I learned from your book, of kind of checking in.
Yeah. There's a lot of ways of approaching it. In my book, I wanted it to be humorous at times, because when I do lectures, they often become humorous. I also wanted it to be in everyman language. I'm a guy from Long Island. I'm not a Swami. I didn't come from the Himalayas. I wasn't raised in Cuba or Brazil. I have no particular cultural advantages. I just know that the same light that was in Mozart or Miles Davis or Abraham Lincoln or whatever area, that same light is in me. And when I can't see it, it's not because it doesn't exist. It's because there are cloud formations blocking it. So I want to get in the moment and let those cloud formations expose themselves for what they are, illusions. So, you can take, and I do take this analogy in the book, there's sunshine and there's clouds. Now, on a cloudy day, you never think, wow, the sun is weaker than it usually is. You know enough about nature that the sun's power and light and heat never changes. The things between it and us change. And that's a very good analogy, because clouds are always temporary, even though they make 2:00 in the afternoon look like 7:00 at night. But they're going to be gone. And there's never a moment you doubt that light. My book is encouraging you to accept the same thing about inner nature that you already know about outer nature. There's a light there, and that light can manifest in any kind of creation, or it can sit there and just enjoy its own light. But you have to learn how to let the things between us, understand that those are the delusions. Pandemic is an illusion as far as what's blocking me from my own inner joy or inner love. Now, if I had the disease, I probably would be in a lot of discomfort, but I still wouldn't let it change the messages in my mind. I'd wait for it to go away or whatever would happen to me. I'm not saying that I'm that courageous. I'm saying that as I go on in life, I keep tuning into the inner landscape more. And I find the outer landscape is not as much a dictator of who I am and how I'm going to feel.
And everything's a practice.
Thank you for bringing that up again, because we all know this fancy stuff. Why aren't we changing? Well, I don't care how much you know about playing the piano. If you don't practice it, it's not going to sound any different in 10 years. The same thing with consciousness. It needs to be practiced. It needs to be incremental, and just do what you can do today and then walk away from it, because it grows. It causes, it's like drops in the bucket, but drops in the bucket eventually fill the bucket. So how am I going to spend the rest of my life? I'm going to spend my rest of my life wasting less of it, worrying about the future or regretting the past, and get into the moment and the richness and the lightness and the simplicity of it? Or am I going to continue to rob myself of precious days, worrying about a different day?
My goodness, Kenny. I mean, we could talk forever. I just find you so inspiring, and I love your book. I don't even play an instrument, and I felt so much that related to my life from your book. So thank you.
Well, I love hearing that, because that was the purpose. My first book was to help musicians get out of their way. And then I, over the years, realized the universality of the same lessons. And I had an ability to talk about it and not get too serious. So I so appreciate your interviewing.
Well, Kenny, where can our listeners connect with you and learn more about your work and be part of your community?
If they just go to kennywerner.com, leave their email address there. A lot of times I do things online, they're fun, and they tend to loosen up the people that watch them. A lot of times I'm doing online courses, and then they'll know about it. Or I might be performing in their town, and they'll know about it. If they want to know about me or the book or my music, just kennywerner.com.
Well, Kenny, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show with us here today.
Thank you, Marianne. It's really a pleasure.
Well, Kenny, it's been such an honor to spend this time with you and to talk about your new book, Becoming the Instrument: Lessons on Self-Mastery from Music to Life. Becoming the Instrument's available at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and all indie retailers. Remember, support our indie bookstores. If you don't see it on the shelf, just ask for them to order it. You can visit Kenny's website at kennywerner.com. That's KennyWerner.com. Well, we're at the end of our time today. I'd like to thank everyone for tuning in. You've been listening to Moments with Marianne, where we make every moment count.
In a single moment, your life can change. Moments with Marianne is a transformative hour that covers an endless array of topics with the best of the best. Her guests are leaders in their fields, ranging from inspirational authors, top industry leaders, and business and spiritual entrepreneurs. Each guest is gifted and a true visionary. A recognized leader in her own work, and while teaching others to develop, refocus, and grow, Marianne will bring the best guest and sometimes a special surprise. Don't miss this. You never know just which moment will change your life forever. Make sure to tune in and visit momentswithmarianne.com for more information.